Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good, anything that works in your time zone. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today in a great panel presentation. Before we deep dive into the agenda and what we'll be discussing for today, I'd like for everybody to just maybe do a quick round of intros. So we'll maybe Steve, why don't we start with you first, and then Gokul, and then myself last.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that. So I'm Steve Johnson. I work for Saga Insurance as a QA lead. I've been doing automation for over 10 years now, using various tools, most recently using Katalon for the last few years. Basically been working with Guidewire since 2016. That's when our development started, and started on Katalon around 2017. We're using another tool initially. But I've got a lot of experience. There is I work with a very big team as well. It's over 40 QA, but not all of them are automating, I should say. But there is a very strong automation effort in there. That's pretty much me. Oh, I'm in Folkestone, by the way, in Kent, in England. Hello.
Great stuff. Thank you, Steve. You're in the right time zone.
Yes.
Gokul, next. Let's talk to you, Gokul.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you all again. Been doing a lot of these webinars for Katalon for some time. That's not my only job. I head up our solution engineering team here at Katalon, and that means everything that's got to do with technology and how we interface with customers from a product perspective. So very nice to meet everyone. Really excited to learn a lot here in this webinar. Mihai, over to you again.
Thank you, Gokul. Okay, and myself, Mihai Grigorescu, I am a director of our global strategic alliances, excuse me, at Katalon. I have been in the testing industry for the last 16 years now, been in delivery and other leadership roles within the testing industry. Having been the head of the quality engineering at Accenture for about 4 years in South Africa, and then working with alliances as well, having worked with Micro Focus. So my role and responsibilities here at Katalon nowadays revolve around managing partners, and with that, managing our strategic partners. And we'll get into a bit more into the thick of it now. So Han, if you don't mind just moving to the next slide so we can talk a bit about the agenda.
Oh, that's me. Sorry, me.
Oh, sorry, Gokul. Yeah. So for today, folks, we want to have as much as an interactive session possible. We didn't prepare too many slides, so please be as interactive as possible. We will chat a lot on the chat box, on the chat window as well. Ask away questions, and then we'll have an open forum at the end of the presentations. We're starting off with the welcome introductions, and then we'll set up the stage where we are with the webinars, and then we'll talk a bit about who Katalon is, especially for those who haven't really been in that position to understand fully where we fit into the picture and into the market. Gokul will carry the conversation over into our client segmentation as well as Katalon capabilities, and we'll try to do that at a very fast pace, so we can give the podium to Steve, because Steve is our star guest over here, and we'd like him to express all the good things, the bad things, and the ugly things that have happened with Katalon in the Guidewire space. Because after all, this is all a conversation about you folks on the call. We want to be able to discuss about Guidewire and how Katalon fits in there, or how it doesn't fit in there at its most anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's discuss about setting the stage. So Gokul, if you don't mind going to next.
Yeah.
Please. All right, and so this is all for everybody on the call to understand what we're doing. And basically, we are now on a roadmap of executing a bunch of webinars that are going to be either product focused around Katalon, or industry focused. And so right now we are doing we're focusing on Guidewire testing as a capability, and obviously focusing a lot on the insurance domain. with Duck Creek having another webinar scheduled in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I believe. Then we'll have Salesforce, we'll have SAP, and then we'll start showcasing the Katalon capabilities around autonomous state generation and generative AI as well. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have the industry-focused events. We'll have some trends in automation led by our friend Mike Verinder in the US, as well as some AI webinar series, which promise to be very, very exciting because of the whole shiny new toy that the AI presents itself as in the industry. So we're talking about ethics, compliance, adoption, disruption, etc. We'll have a series of webinars starting around June and finishing up around September, October. So please make sure that you stay up to date and abreast with all these webinars by going to katalon.com/webinars. You have the link up there on top. You can view the ones that you haven't been able to attend in person, and you're going to be able to also register for the ones that are coming up. So we're really excited to bring this information and this amount of content to you. And with that being said, let's move over to the first poll. We'd like to take your where's the poll? The poll is gone. Han, there we go. So here's a poll for you folks, please. Would like to get your understanding on what is it that you would like to see more in the future, whether if it's Katalon products focused webinars or industry focused or industry themed webinars. Please put your questions in. And I would also like to not necessarily test your attention by asking you to type in something in the chat, but because Zoom doesn't have the possibility of capturing free text, we want to ask you a question. What is, in just a few words, what is the most important topic of conversation for you that you'd like to see in these webinars? If you could please type your answers away in the chat window in Zoom, that would be fantastic. So things like I would like to see how Katalon fits into SAP, for instance, or just one of the topics, or it could be how do you actually use generative AI in testing overall, stuff like that. So if you can just please type in your questions away or your comments away in the chat box, that would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we got 80%, 86% participation in the webinar. So let's end the poll. Okay, perfect. All right, so how do we share results? Oh, this is the share results. Okay. So most of you have said you would like to see a combination of both, whereas 5 of you have said that you would like to see Katalon product focused webinars. So we'll try to keep the promises on both ends. With that being said, let's move over into the presentation mode again. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes over here, so we can speed this up a bit. So for those of you who haven't had the chance to work with Katalon before, this is just a reminder of who we are in the market and what our brand stands for. Katalon was founded back in 2016 as a free product, and its mission was to be an open, capable, and affordable end-to-end quality management platform. So we are still empowering teams of all sizes to deliver exceptional digital experiences at a high quality and faster. Now, this is what the vision and the mission was set out from the get-go. In 2019, we had the first enterprise version coming along with Katalon Studio Enterprise, and between 2016 and 2019 with the first commercial version, and then the 2020 and now where we're sitting in 2023, we have about 2,000 paid customers with an estimated of about 20% of the market footprint, which is great. It means we're really making a difference out there in the world, and we are actually providing support and provide a catalyst for automation to teams like Steve's team out there in the world. And for those ones who haven't really caught on my pun, Katalon stands for Catalyst for Automation, and the name was just combined as such back in the day. Having said that, let's talk a bit about the partners, because this is why we're setting up these webinars. So we have about 200 global, regional, and tech partners alike. We also are part of the hyperscalers like Amazon. So you will be able to find Katalon on the Amazon marketplace as well. And our main product focus as well as partner focus has been mainly on three things. Number one, focus on getting more support for the large technology platforms, the large package applications like Salesforce, Oracle, SAP, ServiceNow, Microsoft, etc. The next one has been even of greater importance, especially given the focus of these niche solutions in the respective industries. Guidewire is number one. Then we have IFS, another fintech application, IVR stuff around call centers, Selenium migrations, etc. So we have a lot of niche solutions that are being developed with our partners that will fit into the market in various ways, but will most likely provide more value and more content for you fine folks out there than anything else. And then we have some other partner specific offerings and platforms that are available only through a certain number of partners, which is not something that we're going to be debating about today. So that's in a nutshell who we are at Katalon, what we do with the partners. And Gokul, I'd like to hand over to you to discuss about the market segmentation and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at who's using our platform, 60% of our users are enterprise clients who are large B2B customers who are using Katalon for their automation needs. And we have a bunch of insurance companies who are already in the financial and insurance sector who are our customers, including Saga, which is where Steve is from. So we'll talk more on that for sure. We do have a lot of GSI, global standard system integrated partners that are part of our ecosystem for developing insurance capabilities. In general, these are some of the case studies that customers have given us. You can see 3 case studies from Liberty and Saga and GE. We're going to talk more about Saga and what's their thought process and what they've seen in the insurance industry, how difficult it is to automate, Guidewire, and then being able to talk about how we can use Katalon to solve some of those challenges. And that's what we're going to really talk about today in our meeting. It's purely from a commercial application landscape perspective. Katalon supports a lot of applications in the space, including SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, the Microsoft ServiceNow. Like you can see the entire list here of commercial solutions that we support. Ultimately, we have videos for a lot of these. We'll share the slide deck once we're done with the webinar. You can go through documentation. There are a lot more commercial solutions that we support that may not have been listed here, but this is a fair bit of, combination of what we see with customers in general. We've also mentioned what is not supported. That way you are aware. We like to be upfront. And you can see that, certain things that we're not really good at supporting. And when we do, we'll change that, right? But that is what we do from a Katalon capability standpoint. So I'll hand it over to Steve for him to introduce himself and what he has done in the space and how he foresees the automation journey happening at Saga and beyond in the industry. So Steve, over to you.
Sure. Hi, thanks, Gokul. So basically just a bit of background first about what we've been doing up until now. So we started on with Guidewire as a replacement for our old insurance platform in 2016. There was originally automation on the old platform as well, but we were very restricted on the tools that we could actually use for that. So basically it was TIA, I'm telling you that. But it's at the time it was all we could actually run was rational functional tester on that. There's very few applications that were compatible with it. So we moved on to Katalon, to Guidewire, I say in 2016. initially we were using another tool. Didn't really work out that well, but that basically there was quite a large project built on that in the first year. What we really needed, though, this was the main problem with that, was something that essentially was versatile enough for us to be able to do anything that we wanted, to handle anything that we wanted to do. But it was also accessible. So basically, it needed to be something that anybody could use without any previous coding experience. So Katalon is a low-code application. So basically what you're talking about is you can set it up, you call the standard functions that you would expect in any automation tool. You sort of get text, set text, click, all this sort of thing. All of that stuff is in the box. On top of that, we basically really needed something which was going to allow us to create custom keywords for Guidewire. Because that was quite an important part of that effort. Initially, what we needed to do was actually create, and this wasn't a huge effort, to be honest, I should say. But we do have a few people in the team who are quite Java literate, so that did help. And of course, there's been upskilling as we've gone along as well. But initially, what it was a question of for Guidewire was setting up custom keywords to handle all of the different kinds of Guidewire object. Also, there's basically anything else that we actually wanted to do, the sort of thing you would normally expect to be able to do in Java. So any kind of data manipulation that we wanted. We wanted to change date formats, for instance, that sort of thing. We'd really need a keyword for that. Any kind of string manipulation to actually do any checks for text. The text might include individual variables that, basically we would need to make sure that's all as expected. And a lot of other stuff as well. This is the advantage of it. It's just that we could basically get it to do anything we needed it to. And what we were seeing from a lot of other tools that we were looking at the time was, this is basically a lot of no-code tools, was that essentially although they look very good from the point of view of just functionality, if you actually got down into the nuts and bolts of it, they weren't actually giving you the ability to, the one that was quite flexible, basically. They weren't actually giving you the kind of ability to do really anything that you wanted to do. But one of the main drives with us is that we had that ability, and also the ability to set it up with these keywords so that anybody who doesn't have any coding experience can use it. So you basically got, I'm going to say, it's a very large QA team. Most of those people were coming in with no coding experience, and that wasn't the requirement for the job for them to have that. So yeah, I mean, basically the automation project needs to be set up in such a way that anybody could script for it, using the out-of-the-box keywords and custom keywords to essentially, initially the way it was done, I'll go through this. Initially the way it was done is that every acceptance criteria in a user story would have to have a new script generate for it. That didn't turn out to be the most efficient way of doing it, to be honest, but it did mean that the whole team got experience on it. The whole team were actually capable of running through, creating their own scripts, their own test cases, and providing that as part of their test effort, as part of their proof, that basically it's, and also, it would contribute to the actual automation project as well.
Great.
So yeah, I mean, that was one of the main things, is just basically to create something that anybody could use. Most of the stuff that's out in the box in Katalon, the web UI keywords that you've got, are fine, and they're still in use all the time in the project.
So
but you do that custom.
On the topic, Steve,
yeah.
What's your take on no code versus low code? I think it would be a very related topic to what you were explaining, because
yeah, sure.
Ultimately, everybody in an organization, can think of it as no code, but we definitely need flexibility for a lot of use cases, and especially in a lot of these commercial applications like Guidewire. It's important that you are able to identify some of these objects, and it gets really difficult in certain scenarios. So it is important that you have some kind of flexibility. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what your take is on between no code and low code.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Katalon is low code. Definitely, the advantage of that, it does give you the ability to really do pretty much anything that you want. This is the thing. And if you can think of it, and you've got somebody who's capable of actually just creating a Java keyword that's actually going to perform that function, a custom keyword in Java, then basically that it's always going to be there for anybody to be able to use, even if they've got no coding experience at all. This is the thing. So it's got that sort of level of flexibility. It is possible to write entire scripts just using the web UI stuff, the stuff that's basically out of the box. I mean, it's always possible to do that. Most of the time, particularly if you're talking about the sort of Guidewire policy center objects and how they're kind of manipulated, that would be something that you would basically use a custom keyword for. That's really kind of the best way of doing it. I mean, just as an example on that front, we've got for tables within Guidewire, we basically got it set up so that just a standard class, a tables class within there, with keywords within it, which essentially for the code tables, all you actually need to do is just map that one object. It's not necessarily to map all the cells, anything of that nature. You can just map that table. And once you've got it, you can send text to particular fields, identify particular fields, get text from them. If there's buttons within the fields, you can basically handle that. You know, radio buttons, web buttons, anything of that nature. Drop down fields, you know, if you've got combo boxes, they're actually within tables. We've basically got stuff to handle that as well. So there's all of that is basically handled within one quite efficient class, custom keyword class that we basically just sort of created ourselves.
Fantastic. So that provides a flexibility for you in order to create those keywords that can be repeatable and don't have to re-innovate every time. You just make it once and reuse it multiple times.
Absolutely.
To that point, specific to this webinar around Guidewire testing, what are some of the core challenges that you see in Guidewire testing in general? How did you accomplish that with Katalon? And what did you see as downsides even with Katalon, right? I think to be honest in this conversation, it's not like a roast
pitch
kind of thing situation. I'm sure there is a journey that you have taken and gotten mature over a period of time. So I really wanted to get that idea.
Certainly. Well, looking at I wouldn't even say it was a downside, to be honest, but the fact that you would need initially, there would need to be experts. You would need some people who know Java in order to actually be able to create those kind of custom keywords. But it would be it's an upskilling thing as well. It's an opportunity for somebody to actually learn that within that space, which you wouldn't necessarily have in a lot of companies. You know, that's the thing. Luckily, initially, myself included, we were starting the project with a handful of people who had some previous experience of that. But essentially, it's with a lot of QA, it wouldn't actually be a requirement. So that's how the kind of coding experience. But to get that kind of experience within that environment, I think it was a good opportunity for us and for other people as well. Because obviously, you know, we've taught other people keyword scripting as well. So, you know, that's been like an ongoing effort. That was one of the challenges initially. The other, I mean, there's other little things like, for instance, waits in Guidewire. So essentially waiting for a page to load, waiting for the application to actually be usable, that sort of thing. This has improved, I should say, in more recent versions of Katalon, because you've got smart wait now, and that does help. But initially it was a question of actually writing a new test listener which used event firing WebDriver. So essentially you would have a test listener sitting there and you'd have a set number of, a set of actions that will basically be carried out before or after each particular action as it's going through. So it could be after a test case is completed. More specifically though, for this, you'll be looking at before an object is found, you would want to basically just wait until a certain set of criteria are fulfilled. So, you know, at the moment, because we're actually on Guidewire, we just very recently actually upgraded to Guidewire 10.2, 10.20. In between every action, you basically get an overlay in Policy Center. That has actually kind of made it that bit of it a bit easier, because we need to do in that listener, is essentially look for that overlay. If the overlay's there, then it's still working. Once it's gone, you can basically just carry on. So it's very easy to kind of handle a wait under those sort of circumstances. One thing that at the moment we're actually still trying to overcome is the fact that portals, which is basically the Guidewire online aspect, you're looking at the actual customer interface. The portal side of it is now built on React, whereas basically before it was on Angular. Very straightforward to actually do a wait on Angular because it was just a JavaScript snippet. There's just a few conditions. You actually need to look at the Angular object. Those conditions need to be fulfilled before you can actually carry on and say, okay, no, we're ready for the next bit. We're basically trying to get a React equivalent of that at the moment. So yeah, that's the thing. Just basically in JavaScript, something that's essentially going to make sure all the background processes are finished before it will carry on and actually do whatever it is you actually want to do. So yeah, I'm sure Steve, we will. Yeah.
So sorry to cut you off there, and just to be a bit of Captain Obvious here, but you are testing a Guidewire with the on-prem instance, not the Guidewire cloud version, correct?
That is true. Yeah, it's actually all local builds predominantly. To be honest, we've got developer laptops. Okay. The actual Guidewire development and the testing is all basically done on local builds on those laptops. Right. We've got work streams as well, so we have servers, but yeah.
And have you tried a Guidewire on the cloud as yet, or do you have any plans to move there?
Not yet. It has been discussed, but we're getting the upgrade out of the way first. That's been a lot of work, but it's possible something that could happen in the future, certainly. Yeah,
gotcha.
I mean, there's a big push to actually get everything on cloud at the moment. All of our work streams are basically sort of, that's all hosted elsewhere now. Right. This is our test servers is what I'm talking about. So yeah, absolutely, and it's something we could consider in the future, but yes, not as yet.
Great. And if you were to completely, completely give us your unadulterated view of what you would change and what types of challenges you've had with Katalon, what would those be in your journey, in your professional journey thus far with us?
Yeah, sure. What would change? There's a few things I'd like to add.
And you cannot say the sales rep because he's already changed.
Okay, that's fine. One thing I would say is document testing. We have kind of this isn't actually more of a Guidewire thing. We've got kind of an unusual setup with documents using smart comms. We've had a look at automating it with other tools in the past. If it's going to get the kind of coverage that we'd really need, the difficulty we've got is the XML changes continuously. There's basically the rules change all the time. It's always just basically been like that. Essentially it's the way the business works.
Yeah.
But really, again, something that was going to be really has to work. Preferably, if you had any kind of document testing functionality out of the box, that would be good. There is PDF box, which obviously Katalon can run into. There's other solutions, but really, that's something that in the whole time that we've been doing automation, that's something that has always kind of been on the back burner because the requirements for that for us would be so big, so vast. So yeah, that's really if I was going to change one thing, it'd be that. Aside from that, though, yeah, I mean there isn't really anything that would change. There's a couple of things that we would. There is another tool that we actually use. I was have to qualify this by saying that we do use JMeter as well. Okay. So this is basically principally for data loading into Guidewire.
Right.
Yeah.
Purely because it's a lot faster. And also an NFT as well. But this is because I don't know if you know JMeter, essentially it's looking at generating JSON requests, which will simulate a browser journey. So you don't actually need to worry about actually going through and clicking the buttons. It will basically just run a very fast journey through whatever it is you want to do. So it's perfect for data loading. You can get it done in moments.
So then Yes, sorry. So then, from a practitioner perspective, I mean, because I'm sure the people on the call would love to learn as well. So, what's your entire testing tool ecosystem looking like today? I mean, what do you use for test management? What do you use for performance? What do you use for data management, for environment management, which is, as we know, all our swear words in our testing industry. So, what is your what is your setup looking like?
Yeah, sure. No, I can tell you that. Well, I say obviously we've got Katalon and JMeter for the automation principally. Aside from that, for continuous integration and environments, you're looking at TeamCity.
TeamCity, yeah.
We've got continuous integration is something that we are getting involved with on the Guidewire front as well. It's going to be basically Guidewire scripts that we're going to be using for that. But yeah, that's actually principally TeamCity that is the application we've got for that. For the general project management, you've got Jira. Specifically test management. We have very recently started with Zephyr as basically a Jira plugin.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few others as well. That's the main stuff. I mean, we've got things like Browser Stack. You know, basically, if we want to do cross-browser testing, that's generally what we use there. You've got, although you can actually do that sort of thing in quite effectively in Katalon as well. But yeah, there's Browser Stack. Few other bits and bobs, Fiddler, Postman, if we're basically doing API requests.
The usual
stuff. Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. Great. So, so I think we had a couple more polls in there, but we kind of forgot to put them in. So we just wanted to ask you folks on the call. I mean, number one, does this talk help you in understanding how to test Guidewire, and what sort of questions do you have? And more so, I'd like to understand also what other insurance applications do you use in the market. This is something that, well, obviously we have KPMG, we have Accenture as large consultancy brands that are developing their own platforms for the insurance space. We have Duck Creek, we have I can't remember now. We added a few more in there. And before we answer that question, here's another poll for you, which is shameless marketing from our side, but we still have to go through it nonetheless. So please, if you can just indicate in there what are your top drivers for your automation needs, that will be interesting to see. So the first answer is applications that are moving to the cloud. The second one is moving from manual to automated. The third one is changing requirements and frequent releases. The fourth one is pressure to reduce cost and increase productivity. And the fifth one is other not specified. So blame it on geopolitical situations, for all we know. Okay, 30% of the people have 35% of the people have answered the question. 41%. Can we get a 50% before we move on to the next poll? No, mostly is manual. Okay. There we go, 58%.
That's pretty good, right? So
yeah.
Steve, in relation to this topic, what do you think is going on at Saga? Are you also your team's moving from manual to automated, like what we see here, and being the most of the responses?
Well, it's an ongoing effort to do that. As I say, we did initially start off with this whole thing of making the automation compulsory alongside the manual testing. That in the long term, it doesn't seem to be the best way of doing it. It needs to be done in a kind of a more natural way, essentially. Everybody's got the tool. They are using it at the moment for things which basically do speed up the day. They're using it for data loading. There's also in Guidewire, you've got a standard set of imports that we need to, particularly for doing local builds. There's a standard set of imports of generic data that you need to run. They're basically using Katalon for that, because basically it can take a bit of time. So that'll essentially just, whenever they do a new build, that'll be run. Smoke tests, basically all running Katalon. Those will run against individual user stories as well. With regards to actually, so people using it and not scripting, essentially, people being kind of passive users, not contributing to the project, that's been going on for a while. We have kind of a nucleus of people. There's up to, I think we're up to about 8 or 10 now who are actually scripting. but there's always been a plan ever since we actually stopped making it mandatory to just try and encourage people to use it more, particularly the ones that were actually sort of proficient in the first place, because there were a lot of people who were very good at it back when it was mandatory, who do still use it, but it's just really kind of expanding that out to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Without actually, saying, okay, as well as your general, your manual test effort, you have to produce this number of scripts, to test these specific values. If those scripts are already there and then you had to find them, then basically the job is done. That's just it needs to be that kind of natural usage. But say, some people do take to it a lot easier than others. But with regards to having an overall solution to that for everybody, we're still working on that, I would say.
Great stuff. Thank you, Steve. And I think, Gokul, I think it's time to go to I think we got one more poll or two more polls, and that's it. We're done. Right. So this one is a bit more interesting. We wanted to check what people out there are using. So as I mentioned before, we have obviously the most predominant technologies, which is Guidewire and then Duck Creek. And then we have some other ones like Majesco and Surety, and as I mentioned, KPMG and Accenture have their own. So everybody pretty much uses their homegrown solutions as well. And some of these platforms are actually integrated with Guidewires and Duck Creeks of this world. So it's interesting to see what solutions people are using out there. So if you wouldn't mind just responding for the people in attendance, we have one answer for Guidewire. That's the most obvious one. So what technologies have you seen predominantly being used in the insurance industry? What do you use currently today? Homegrown solution. There we go. There's one there. Who else is going to respond to this? Let's see. Let's make it more interesting. Whenever we get to 80%, we'll hand out some drones. Yeah, no, nothing, no response. All right, so there we go. Numbers are coming up with the promise of getting a drone to fly around. Okay, so Guidewire or homegrown solutions, that's pretty much what we're getting over here as well. So that's pretty much aligned to what we've seen in the market as well. Most of the people that we've worked with before are using either Guidewire or Duck Creek or homegrown solutions, and those are the main three applications. So that's great. I think we're done with the polls, aren't we, Gokul?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're already 20 minutes into 20 minutes to finish the webinar. So do you want us to go to open forum and start asking questions and having an open conversation?
Yeah.
All right, so folks on the call and on the attendees, let's just take all your questions and answers now. So let's go from the top. The questions that we have for you the questions are, did you find this useful, for one? And number two, do you have any questions for Steve? So we can tackle them now. So Anna, Babe, Chandra, Dan, Geras, Jochen, June, Chris, Maria. Let's take your questions first. I'm just taking people as I see them on my screen here with no priority in mind. So please ask away your questions on the chat box or on the questions pan over here. Tab, sorry, not pan. Fine. And then we stopped at Maria, I think. So Miro, Nicole, Niha, Patrick, Prayogo, RS, and Teresa, please ask away your questions as well if you have any.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple of minutes, and if there are no questions, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, when we have no questions, we did a super good job.
There's a question here from Nicole.
Yeah.
Question for Stephen. Curious if you saw improvements in the automation scripts regarding locating objects smoother with the latest upgrade version 10.
I wouldn't say it was easier. I've got to be honest with you. There's basically, particularly on the portal side, a lot of the time previously we were using IDs specifically, and there was originally when we started with Guidewire, there was kind of a general agreement that any new objects wouldn't get introduced without IDs because it was basically going to make the automation a lot easier if they did that. That doesn't appear to have been possible with, well, I say unique ID specifically. It doesn't appear to have been possible with Guidewire 1020 as much. We've still identified all the objects. Everything's been mapped. It's not been a question of that. There's no question of that, but it has required a bit more effort than it did, I would say.
The second question from Chris. Do you use Katalon for API testing or Postman?
Yes, no, we use both. Katalon, principally what we use that on the API side for is we use aggregators. So essentially this is other companies to list prices from a number of different insurance companies, and we'll basically have an API, we'll contribute to an API. Well, they will send to our API. We'll basically send a price back. So simulating that whole process and actually checking the results, also checking them in Policy Center and Billing Center once they've actually been taken up. That's all basically done in Katalon. There's a couple of other things that are done as well. We've got this is quite specific, but one of the processes is signing up to a membership for my Saga, and that requires an email verification. So basically normally it would be an email that would go out. They'd have to click a verification box, send it back to us. We've actually managed to handle that whole process by API. We've just got a test API, which will basically just send the email address off to. It will come back with success. That's fine. We can just carry on with the rest of the journey then. That's good. So we can essentially skip that whole process because it never changes anyway, so we don't actually need to test it. So it's quite a nice thing to be able to do in Katalon as well. But we also use Postman and Fiddler for any kind of manual individual API testing that goes on. So with Katalon, the API testing is much more the kind of stuff that's basically done in the regression. Those kind of aggregator requests, I say this, or email verification, that kind of stuff. It handles all of that.
Great. Okay. I think the next question from Nicole is your focus in Katalon testing only on the UI and our API, or do you have it utilized for validating GW database?
Yeah, this is something we've been meaning. It's another thing that's been on the back burner for a while, just having that full end-to-end database testing. Well, just basically, for the entire, as you say, the entire sort of data journey. So no, at the moment is the short answer, but we are planning to. One thing I would say related to that though, and it's probably worth mentioning this, with regards to the test data that we use, that's all held on a separate SQL server. So, and it's actually imported in the Katalon with a sort of random set of values for each test case. Obviously, that's not specifically what you're talking about, but I would say it's worth mentioning that that's possible.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, those are the main questions that we got so far. Anybody else with a last question or two, maybe? Come on, we're paying Steve big money here to have his time, so please bring. Well, we'll get you with. I see that the custom here in the UK especially is in the States everybody was like, let's go grab a cup of coffee, and in the UK it's like, let's go grab a pint of beer. Like, okay, completely different customs, but yeah. So Steve, whenever I see you next around here in the London area, we'll grab a drink of sorts.
Sounds good.
But okay. Yeah, but seriously now, if you have any more questions, please post them down before it closes. There we go.
There's one more. We'll take this as the last one and we'll close after. Do your testers run the test suites themselves? Are most of them, most scripts integrated maybe within pipelines?
We actually, yeah. So the smoke test they do. We have a smoke test suite collection, which is just a very small. The main functionality essentially is what you're looking at there. The main functionality of the application. They will the expectation is that they would actually run that themselves, unless they're working on a bigger project, in which case we would handle the running the regression and the smoke tests ourselves. But if they're doing individual builds, yeah, part of the actual acceptance criteria for that, well, part of the actual test effort would be that they just run that smoke test just to make sure nothing's been knocked out. With regards to the general, well, the regression smoke, the regression test suite collection, that's just run by lead QAs. We've got a separate VM set up for that. It runs 8 tests in parallel. It's actually sending all of those requests off to us another VM, which runs Selenium Grid, which is free. It's worthwhile looking into that if you're worrying about parallel testing. And it basically sends them off. But that's essentially that whole setup is really just for the QA leads. I mean, we're the only ones who are actually able to access that. But with regards to the pipeline, so you're looking at the CI/CD pipeline, that's something that at the moment we are again looking into. But that would essentially be smoke tests run as part of deployments automatically in TeamCity is what we're looking at. Potentially smaller kind of regressions actually run as well whenever a deployment actually gets done. So, but that's that's well underway. But yeah, we haven't actually finished that yet.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us.
No problem.
Nicole, I think you had a bunch of questions, so feel free to set up time with Steve. I'm sure he can spend 30 minutes to walk you through some of the use case. Sorry, Steve, I'm speaking on behalf of you, but that could be an option, definitely. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar today, and hope you enjoyed some of the insights that Steve had provided from an insurance perspective. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Gokul. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a great rest of your day.